Over the last couple of episodes, we've looked at how you can become the best defensive team in your league. And we're going to take that one step further now, and we're going to build a complete tactic, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to build a very, very simple tactic, which will be very, very successful, and we're going to reverse engineer it. Let's go and kick some balls. Hello and welcome back to FM with Old Man Phil. And if you are a brand new visitor, I'm Phil, and welcome to the channel. And over the last couple of episodes in this series of 4, we've been looking at how to set up your team to become the best defensive team in your league. And we've been very successful applying a system across a number of saves, and we always turn out to be the best defensive team in the league. And as you can see here from our live stream with Notts County, a team that's way overperforming, we are the best team in terms of goals conceded. We are the best team in the league. And in our Hiroshima save, similar to Notts County, we are top of the league. We are the best team in terms of attacking and the best team in terms of defending. And we set up the tactic in exactly the same way as we set up the tactic for Notts County. And finally, we did a test with Arsenal. And as you can see, once again with Arsenal, very, very similar story. We are top of the league, we are the best in terms of attacking, and we are the best in terms of defending. And so we have set this tactic up to in a very similar way to what we did with the other two. And today we're going to take a look at how to build a very, very simple tactic, which will be very, very successful. Often people who are just setting out on the game will have a problem understanding how to put a tactic together. And it's one of the hardest parts of the game when you first start to play this game. But it's a very, very simple way that you can do it. And today we're going to build a tactic based on what we've been doing already so far. If you can't do it, don't do it. And once you've got the concept of this and you understand how the attributes play a huge part in setting up your tactic and tell you exactly what your team can do and can't do, what they're good at and what they're not good at, then putting together a tactic, a formation, a shape, whatever, call it what you like, will be one of the simplest things that you have to do in this game. It's just a case of understanding how to do it. And in order to do it, we're going to do it backwards. We're going to reverse engineer a tactic. And I'm going to select a team at random, the team I know nothing about, and we're going to show you how we set up that tactic, and then I'm going to play 8 games or so and see how that tactic gets on. Will we be the best in terms of attacking, and will we be the best in terms of defending in the league? But just before we get into it, if you are brand new to the channel, you love FN content, give us a like and hit that subscribe button, and also click that bell, and then you will be notified when we upload brand new videos. So I think it's time to get on with it now. Let's go and find out what team we're going to set up and reverse engineer this tactic with. Let's go and kick some balls. And so the team that we have and we are going to set up a tactic with and play the first 8 or so games is going to be Watford. And I have absolutely no idea what the prediction is for Watford. What I do know is that we are about to begin our first game of the new championship season. So the pre-season is done and the first championship game is about to begin. So this team is not going to have a lot of time to get used to the tactic that we're going to prepare for them. And let's have a look at basically where they are predicted to finish in the season preview. They are predicted to finish in 6th. It's probably therefore going to be a fairly decent side. They don't have many players in the Dream 11. They don't have any in the Dream 11. But in terms of a championship team, there are some very, very good teams sitting above them. They are in 6th place and they should be looking at a playoff place. In terms of the club vision, that is exactly what the club wants. They want them to reach the Sky Bet Championship playoffs. And I would say I would feel very optimistic about reaching the playoffs, if not looking for a automatic promotion place. So we have to first of all now get them ready to play in the season, remembering that our first game is just a few days to go. And you can or cannot do this. I don't always do this, but you can go to your squad and just have a look. This might help you in terms of what the squad is capable of doing. Is it a good defensive team? Is it a good attacking team? Is it great in midfield? What is their strength? A lot of people use this to find their best players and to work their team around their best players. I don't do that. I just want to know, are we good defensively? Are we good in attack? Are we good in midfield? And if we put these in terms of their ability, we can clearly see that a lot of their players are either central defenders, their top players are either attackers or central defenders. So we have 3 of our top players are defenders, and the rest of 6 or 7 are going to be attackers. Midfield, we are a bit light, and therefore we have to build our midfield based on the fact that at the moment we are a little bit light going into our first game in the Championship. We also don't have any money, and so just buying players is not going to be an option for us. We do have Asprilla, who is one of our best players, if not our best player. He's wanted, could bring in 10 or 12 million. We don't know what's going to happen there. Until that happens, we really just have to focus on building a team with what we've got. So that's what we're going to do, and as we've just found out, we are pretty good in attack, and that's probably where we need to focus when we start building our tactic. And as we said before, we're going to build a very, very simple tactic, and therefore we're going to go with what the game recommends in terms of how this team should play. And it's given us 3 options. I don't really like wing play. I definitely don't want to be playing route 1, so we're going to go with a fluid counter-attack. Don't worry about this. This is just us setting up how we want to play. We are going to alter this and change it. It's not going to be the finished product. We're not going to be playing in a cautious mentality. So we're going to choose that, and now we'll go to a formation, bearing in mind that we are good up front and that we are good in defence. The problem that I have with a 4-3-3 is that we may not be good enough in central midfield, so I'm going to go with a 4-2-3-1. This is a much more attacking option, and because most of our players are better up front than they are anywhere else on the pitch, we're going to go with that. And we're going to click confirm, and we are going to set up our team very, very loosely. Because I don't know the team, I'm just going to ask my assistant to pick without restriction, to pick the entire team and to just put in what he thinks is probably going to be our best team. Now I'm going to go through this and I'm going to change some things because I'm probably not going to agree with him. And so I don't want wing backs to be on automatic. I do like the idea of playing with wing backs because we are going to be playing a little bit more positive rather than cautious, bearing in mind that we are an attacking team. We have a good attacking setup. Let's be positive. And so we're going to go through these roles one by one, and we're going to change this team just slightly. I'm going to have a wing back on support over on this side, and I'll probably have a wing back on attack over on this side. Basically, what we're going to do is set up a very simple, very, very simple tactic. And we're not going to play with a ball-playing defender. We're a Championship team. We're going to play with 2 central defenders on defend, and that should hopefully be enough for us in terms of that. Looking at these 2 in midfield, I think the ball winner, probably not a good idea for a Championship team. I'm going to play a defensive midfielder on this side, and I'm going to play a deep line playmaker on this side. I actually know that the best player in that position is going to be Lusa, who is a very good deep line playmaker for Championship level. So that's going to be our midfield sorted on this side. I'm going to keep this as an inverted winger on support, and we're going to play a winger on attack on this side. And then we are going to keep that as an attacking midfield on support. Nothing wrong with that as a role, and Healy can stay as the advance forward on attack. I think that you can clearly now see that up front we are much, much stronger than we are at the back. And so this is probably the best way to set up the tactic. And so, as you can see, this is a very, very basic tactic that we have set up. We have given each of these players some additional instructions to what the role says that they should do, and that is based purely on what they can and cannot do as individuals. And so, for example, this wing back is asked to mark tighter. That is because he is capable of doing a little bit of marking. I also want him to sit narrower and to dribble less and to shoot less often, just purely based on what he can and cannot do. And the DLP, another example here, he's asked to close down more. He can close down very nicely, and he is capable of marking, cannot tackle, so he's not asked to tackle harder. And neither is the DM, whose marking and tackling isn't very good, so he just has the job of just holding his position. But he can pass, and he does have very good vision, so I might ask him to take more risks when he is on the ball. And so, as you can see, I've given them some very, very simple instructions. Because I am playing a winger on attack in this on this side, then what I might do is play an inverted wing back on this side. This means that he will come into midfield. He will also be, perhaps, depending on high up the pitch we are playing, be a nuisance in this area up here. And because he is now playing as an inverted wing back on support and playing in this area here, what I might do is I will adjust the tactic and I'll put an underlap on the right. What this will mean is that the winger will then stop, look for support inside, and this might cause problems with the DM, with the advanced midfielder and the inverted wing back in this area, creating huge overloads. So it's something that we can try at the beginning. And if it doesn't work, we can try something else. And that's the essence of building a tactic. We're going to look at how this works at the beginning, and then we will see how it pans out. Now we want to put the team instructions together, because this is really, really important, and this is how we want the team to play. And we're going to apply the principle of, if you can't do it, don't do it, because we're going to base it on the attributes of the team. And as you know, every team has a bunch of attributes. There are physicals, there are mentals, and there are technicals. And we're going to base what the team can do on the team averages and how good they are as a team at performing that function. And each one of these things is about whether the team is good, whether the team is bad, whether the team can do it, whether the team can't do it. And each one of these will have to be adjusted according to what the team can do. So let's make a start, and let's go first of all to the ones that we've done already. And we'll start with the reverse engineering it now with the out of possession screen. And so we have already looked at this screen before, and we're just going to reset this because we want it to be from a blank screen and we don't want to have anything clicked at this point in time. And so we're looking at this is all wrong for me. Remember that the line of engagement is really about how good your team is at being an absolute nuisance and getting the opposition to make mistakes and where you would like the opposition to make mistakes. So if they're very, very good at getting the opposition to make mistakes, then we want to have a higher line. We want to put our line of engagement as high as possible so that they make mistakes here and not down in our half of the pitch. This will make us far more dangerous. The defensive line is about how good or bad our defence is and how likely they are to make a lot of mistakes. If we have a very, very good defence, then we'll push the line up higher. If we are not so good, then we're going to have to bring the lines back a little bit, because by bringing the line back a little bit, it will serve two purposes. Firstly, if they are pacey and can dribble, it means that they will not find it so easy to get balls over the top and to skip past us. We will be backing off a little bit in order to allow them space in front of us. But also, if we're not very good as defenders, then by reducing the line a little bit, it will give us more time when we receive the ball, and we can be a little bit more composed. We can have a little bit better control of the ball and distribute the ball a lot more efficiently. If we are too high up the pitch, then what could happen is that when receiving the ball, our defenders don't have a lot of time, make mistakes, and then suddenly we are giving the ball away and are very vulnerable at the back. And so where we position this is also very, very important. Trigger press is linked to how good we are at being a nuisance and how likely it is that we are going to get the opposition to make mistakes. This now will be all over the pitch, whereas this line of engagement is just where we are going to engage them when we haven't got the ball. And so this is going to be how likely are the opposition to make mistakes and how good are we at making them make mistakes. As for these, this is about whether or not we can tackle, and this is really about compressing the midfield. Do we need to compress the midfield? I always would like to stop the crosses. Unless I have all defenders over 6'6", then I'm going to want to stop crosses. Particularly, but fullbacks are very vulnerable at the far posts, and so I don't want crosses coming into my box, even if I have got very tall central defenders. Let's just stop them. And they don't always stop the crosses, but we might as well try. And if I do have a lower defensive line, then I generally will step up more, especially if I only have two in midfield, because we are light there then, and it will need to push up to compress the space and to make sure their midfield are not getting the opportunity to dominate the game and put balls in over the top or through balls through the middle. And so I need to just check where these lines should be. And as we saw before, this is about how good we are at being a nuisance. And so we have to know about how aggressive we are. Do we have good acceleration? Do we anticipate situations well? And do we have good decisions? And so we will go to our squad planner and we'll check that out. And we'll go to the comparison screen and we are looking at the acceleration. We do have decent acceleration. It's not brilliant. And we do have decent pace, but it's not brilliant either. We are quite strong and we are quite fit. And our work rate, although for this league it's quite low, our work rate is decent. It's not too bad. It just looks bad because of this graph. But 12.15 for a championship team is actually decent work rate. It's not brilliant, but it is decent. A Premier League team, a very good Premier League team, will have between 14 and 15. 12 is not bad. It does mean that they do have a little bit of work in them. Teamwork is a little bit of a concern. That is not very good. And their anticipation is not very good, but they are very aggressive. And this is quite important for a championship team. If they're aggressive, then probably they will worry the team quite a lot. And so I would say of this team that yes, they are probably very capable of causing teams to make mistakes at the back. And so a high line of engagement is probably a good idea, especially as we are going to be playing in a very positive way because we want to attack rather than to defend. Our attack is better than our defence. And so we've sorted out we'll play with a high press and probably we will trigger press more often. And depending on whether the goalkeeper is good or bad in terms of his passing and composure, we will switch that on or off. It will depend on the opposition goalkeeper. And our defensive line will be dependent on how good our defence is and how capable they are of not making mistakes. And so we're going to be looking at composure, decisions, positioning, anticipation, passing and dribbling, and looking at the numbers for those particular attributes, and that will determine just where that line should be. And so we will go to our squad planner and we'll have a look at those attributes. But this time we're only going to be looking at our defenders. It's our defensive line that we want to make sure that have the attributes. And so we're not going to include the goalkeepers or the midfielders and the strikers for this. We're just going to measure it in terms of how good our defenders are. And we can clearly see that we have good balance. Our agility is decent, but it's not great. But our balance is very good, which means that we might be able to turn quite quickly, and couple that with decent acceleration for defenders and decent pace for defenders. So we're not super quick, but we might be okay in terms of playing a higher defensive line. And particularly impressive is our balance. Our natural fitness at the back is good and we are quite strong. So bear that in mind as we're thinking about where our line should be placed. And in terms of our mental abilities, we are quite aggressive again. Our decisions are okay, but we are not brave, and our composure is pretty poor and our concentration is pretty poor. Decision making is pretty poor as well, and we are, in terms of mentals, not looking that great. Our positioning is decent, but it's not great, and work rate at the back is very good, bearing in mind that 14 and a half would be very good for a Premier League team. Work rate is quite good, and our teamwork at the back is quite good, which would mean that the offside would work, but the rest of the mentals are telling me that perhaps we shouldn't be playing too high up the pitch. And so in terms of our pace, our jumping reach, our heading, and in our general ability, and how often we are likely to make mistakes, what I'm going to do with this team is I'm going to have a standard line and I'm going to step up more. And we're going to have space in the middle, but by stepping up more, we're asking our midfielders and the defenders to just step up when the opposition have won the ball and try to close them down. And we hopefully have players in midfield who can close them down and therefore eliminate a problem. But the whole point of this is that we're not going to be vulnerable to balls over the top, and we're going to give ourselves a little bit more time when we receive the ball in order to control it and distribute it efficiently and not make mistakes and give the ball away in very dangerous areas. And so that part of the tactic, this screen of the tactic, the out of possession, is done. That's all we need to do, and now we'll move on to the next one, the in transition screen. And in this screen, we are pretty much looking at just a few things, and we're looking at our ability to counter-press, to counter, and how we want our goalkeeper to deal with the ball when he has it. Now, we already know that our goalkeeper is poor at passing. He has a poor throw. He's not very good at kicking, so I don't want him taking any risks at all. So he can just roll it out to anyone who happens to be near him, and that way we'll stop him from making mistakes at least. He still probably will make them, but at least we're going to attempt to stop him making mistakes. In terms of our ability to counter, we have to consider a few things. Firstly, do we have enough pace and acceleration to mount counterattacks? Are we good at off the ball? And are we good with our passing and distribution? Is our vision good? We are working off the principle of if you can't do it, don't do it. So we're going to go to our squad planner again, and we're going to have a look at our ability to counter-attack. And so if we think about the four things that we were thinking about, the first one was, well, let's look at dribbling as well. We're not very good at dribbling, and our technique is not brilliant. And if we look at our mentals, although we're quite aggressive, and that does help when you are counter-attacking, we are not very composed, we're not very determined, and our work rate is poor, our teamwork is poor. And so it's not really looking that great. Off the ball is poor. We are not the fastest of teams, and our passing and our vision, they're not great. So it's probably not a good idea for us to be counter-attacking, and so we're going to leave that off. We are not really that bad, bearing in mind that we are predicted to finish in 7th. We're not that bad that we need to hold our shape in case we get ourselves into trouble. Our defence are not that bad, so we're going to keep that off, but we are not going to counter-attack. We will sometimes, but we're not going to click counter-attack and have players just going up the field willy-nilly and leaving ourselves a little bit vulnerable at the back. The counter-press, we already know, we've already seen that we are not very good at counter-pressing the opposition. We're not very good at putting them under pressure. And so we are going to leave the counter-press off for now. We're not going to regroup either, but we're just going to leave it off. Now, by leaving these two things off, as we said in the last video, it does not mean that we are not going to counter-press, and it does not mean that we are not going to counter-attack. What it means is that we are going to be a little less frequent over it and hopefully make decisions around whether or not it's a good idea to do it at the time. And so we're not going to be as aggressive as we would be if those two things were on. We're going to take our time, and it does mean that we'll probably create less chances, but we're going to be safer at the back while doing it. And then finally, it brings us, and so having established that we're going to do very little here, that brings us to our first screen and how we are going to attack. And this is something that we haven't seen before. And just like every one of the boxes that we've looked at in the previous two screens, this one is no different. And we're going to start with our passing style. And we've already found out that we're not the greatest passing team in the world. We're not the worst passing team in the world, but we're not good. We're just an average passing team. And so in order to make the most of our ability to pass them, we have to play at a lower tempo. So we're going to set that to slightly lower because we cannot pass. And if we try to start flashing the ball around the pitch at speed, we're going to be turning the ball over quite often. So by lowering the tempo, we're going to be able to hold on to the ball. Now, we could play with a slightly shorter or a little bit more direct, but probably if we are going to play with a slightly lower tempo, I would like to play with a slightly shorter pass. And to enable that to work a lot better, I'm going to reduce the width of the pitch as well. And so we're going to play a little bit shorter with a slightly lower tempo and fairly narrow so that our passes are going to connect with each other. And hopefully that's not going to put too much pressure on the boys. We are going to time waste sometimes when we have throw-ins and corners and allow the team to settle, and hopefully that will buy us a little bit more time as well. I just don't want us rushing things, and I want us to be able to keep the ball quite comfortably, and so this would effectively enable us, because our passing is not the greatest, this system would enable us to do that quite effectively. If we are not good at passing, then we are not going to be passing into space as well. This will require good off the ball, and it will require good vision. We have neither of those two things, and so we are not going to pass it into space. We're going to pass to feet and try and control possession. We believe that would be the best way of playing with this. And playing out of defence, would that be a good idea for Watford? Well, we can go to the squad planner and have a look again at our comparison. This time we're only going to pick the defenders, and we are going to look at the defenders' ability to pass the ball out and to maintain possession. And so in order to be able to do that, our composure is going to need to be good. And so our defenders' composure, it's not bad, it's not brilliant, they will make mistakes. Their decisions is exactly the same, and again, they will probably end up making mistakes. In terms of their technical ability to pass the ball, it's not very good, and their vision is not very good as well. So we don't really want to be passing the ball out of defence. We're going to make more mistakes than the worth of it if we attempt to do that. If we look at our dribbling as an option to bring it out of defence, our defenders have only got 9.7 dribbling. It's not very good. It's not a good idea to be playing the ball out of defence. In terms of our aerial ability, and if we look at the strikers in terms of our aerial ability, our jumping reach, our heading ability is 12, which is decent, but it's not good. And our jumping reach for the strikers is 10.67. It's not very good. And so probably not a good idea to be floating crosses into the box. And so with that information in mind, we're not going to be playing out of defence, and we're not going to be floating crosses. I want them putting low crosses into the box to feet. Whether or not to work the ball into the box, well, that is going to be about our ability to finish. And let's go and have a look at our ability to finish. And that will be in our technical abilities, 8.67. We are not the best finishers in the world. Neither do we have a great long shot, and neither is our composure exceptionally good either. So it's probably not a good idea to be taking long pings from outside the box. So I want them to work the ball into the box. Do I want them to run at the defence? No, I've already seen that their dribbling is very poor. I would like them to dribble less. And this one I will leave as it is at the moment, because I don't know whether we need to be more disciplined or whether I need them to be more expressive. So at the moment, I will leave that one blank. Playing for set pieces will depend on a number of issues. I don't have great set piece takers. What is the point of playing for set pieces? And that basically is how we are going to set up our tactic. It's very, very simple. It's not very intensive. And looking at it, though, it is a problem that they are not familiar with the way that we've set them up. And that probably means that we're going to have a bad start to the season, or it won't be an extremely good start to the season. But it is a way that they can play, and we've based it all on what they can and cannot do. And so out of possession, this is about how able they are to play at the back and whether or not they will make lots of mistakes. We've set it at standard. We also are going to worry them and press them up here a little bit in order to try and make them to make mistakes. But we don't want to be constantly counter-pressing, because we're not capable in terms of our work rate, especially, to do that. We don't want to be counter-attacking and getting out of shape all the time, but we don't want to be just holding our shape. We're going to play positive, we're going to play narrow and try to hold on to the ball. Our passing is good enough to hold on to the ball, but only probably at a lower tempo. And we will work the ball into the box. We'll do low crosses and dribble less. And that is a very, very simple tactic that we have set up. Now I think we should go and have a look at how we have got on. And so this is where we came in, the first game of the championship season. And as you can see, we have played 8 games now. In all competitions, we have won 7 of them, and we have drawn 1. We were very unlucky in that Birmingham game. We had an international break here for 2 weeks. And unfortunately, all our midfielders came back extremely tired. So when we lined up for the game against Birmingham, our midfield was out on its feet. We still got a very creditable 1-1 draw, though. Birmingham are a good team. And we got a 1-1 draw, and we are doing particularly well. We are top of the league. We've played 6, won 5 in the league, drawn 1 and lost none. We've not lost all season. In terms of the tactic, the squad are now a lot more familiar. Having played 8 games or so, they've got themselves knowing exactly how we want them to play. And what is extremely exciting is that we are the best team in the league in terms of attacking potential, and we are the best team once again in the league in terms of goals conceded. Everything's on track for a very, very good season here at Watford. But in order to become the very, very best team, and we're doing this consistently with this methodology, whether it be with Notts County, Arsenal, whether it be with Hiroshima or now Watford. We are consistently doing it. But there is one more thing that we need to do, and we are preparing on a game-to-game basis. And what we need to be able to do is to interpret the information that we get in this screen here, which is a comparison between ourselves and the opposition. And I will use this to assess the strengths and weaknesses of the opposition. It's rather like pitting them attack versus defence. So I'm going to do one more video on that screen and how I use that in conjunction with the team report. And so that's it for this episode. We will be looking at that screen in the next one. And if you do want to have an explanation of how you set individual player instructions based on how you want to play and what they're capable of doing, then I'll do a video on that. If you want a video on setting up individual instructions, let me know in the comments and I'll put one together. But that's it for now, and if you are brand new to the channel, then why not subscribe, give us a like, and when you're subscribing, hit the notification bell so that you'll be updated whenever we upload future videos. In the next video, we will be looking at that comparison screen and how we use that and the scouting report to set up for individual games. And all that remains to be said now is stay safe, take care. We'll see you in the next video.